Let's talk about Dondozo and Tatsugiri, everyone! The dynamic duo of Scarlet and Violet, even more so than Incineroar and Rillaboom were in Sword and Shield when it comes to VGC. Despite the weakness that comes with being restricted to only having access to one Pokemon in a normally 2-on-2 environment, these two have all but cemented their fearsome power in the Pokemon battles of VGC. And even as recently as March 25th, Dondozo and Tatsugiri are still demonstrating that power despite haze plays, burns, spores, perish song, even a newly conceived curse usage from ghost types, and finally, not even paradox Pokemon will frighten them out of the scene. Why is it that these two keep coming back, no matter what the community brings against them, and even what the rules will allow?
Is there more to us than the words we say, the games we play? Can we know that we're not dreaming?
So, here is a very brief overview of what Dondozo and Tatsugiri do. Dondozo is a base 530 water-type Pokemon with a massive health pool, a strong physical attack and defense stat, a below-average special attack and defense stat, and finally topped off with a very subpar speed stat. Tatsugiri, meanwhile, is a very small water dragon fish thing that kind of looks like Suchi, with a base stat total of 475, emphasizing its special attack at 120 and speed at 82, and it also comes with a good special defense stat, but a very pitiful defense and HP stat line of 60 and 68 respectively. Now, on their own, these two aren't that special. Dondozo is just a slightly less bulky Wailord with a slightly stronger attack stat, and Tatsugiri is pretty much a basic Choice Scarf user that wants to move fast and hit hard with special attacks. Again, nothing special. Nothing at all special about them on their own. Together, however, they form one of the most terrifying duo ever to be released by Pokemon Company, and not because of some simple intimidate, fake out, snarl, party shot, glassy guide spam like Incineroar Rillaboom of Sword and Shield, but because these two actually combine into one Pokemon. Tatsugiri has access to the unique Commander ability, and upon Tatsugiri hitting the field, if Dondozo is on the field as well, Tatsugiri will immediately get into Dondozo's mouth and boost all of Dondozo's stats by 2 stages each. If Dondozo is left alone, that means it gets 2 in every single stat. 2 in attack, 2 in defense, 2 in special attack, 2 in special defense, 2 in speed. This thing becomes a nightmare. This puts the extreme Evo boost from Generation 6 to shame. Eevee had to wait an entire turn before it could use those boosts, and at best, it used them to baton pass into another Pokemon to take advantage of the boost, and not Eevee itself. This turns Dondozo from a relatively average slow Pokemon, with only a respectable attack stat, into a monster of a Pokemon, able to shrug off the strongest hits, survive the toughest of assaults, and just obliterate everything on the field if no response was had. On top of that, Tatsugiri also comes in unique forms, different forms, and depending on the form inside Dondozo's mouth, when Dondozo uses its signature move Order Up, one of 3 boosts were given if the attack connected. And mind you, before the patch, it also had a bug where it got the boost regardless of if the attack connects or not. Oh boy, those were dark days, people. If the curly form was the commander, Dondozo gained an attack stage, allowing Dondozo to nullify Intimidate spam. If droopy form was the commander, Dondozo gained defensive stages, allowing Dondozo to just wall the opponent and let residual damage do the work. Finally, if stretchy form was in there, Dondozo gains a speed stage, allowing Dondozo to just outspeed whatever was on the field. The downside to this, however, is once Tatsugiri gets into the mouth, Dondozo cannot be swapped out, nor can it be roared out or whirlwinded out, and nor could Tatsugiri be swapped out. It's either Dondozo faints or the opponent loses for the Dondozo user. While Dondozo and Tatsugiri didn't use this boost in the story, for, obvious reasons, this duo became one of the strongest Pokemon in the game for how little investment was needed. A little leftovers item here, an investment into your defenses and HP there, select a Tatsugiri form as your commander, choose the Terra type in your move pool, and you have a strong offensive and defensive threat that your opponent has to answer or they'll just flat out lose. The idea behind Dondozo Tatsugiri is to trade out Dondozo and its huge stat and health pool for as many of your opponent's Pokemon as possible, or weaken them to a position where your remaining Pokemon can win you the game after. It also can serve as a late game end closer, because if your opponent has expended Pokemon or health, Dondozo's massive health pool and its +2 and everything once Tatsugiri is inside its mouth will result in an inevitable GG from the opponent. Now, while Tatsugiri is in Dondozo's mouth, it is also immune to any potential damage or nasty effects the opponent may use on it. While it's in the mouth, Tatsugiri cannot be hurt by spread moves, and nor can it be targeted by attacks. If it is, the move will miss. You cannot use Perish Song against Tatsugiri as Dondozo will protect it, and even if Dondozo is killed, Tatsugiri will be expelled and put on the field, but it won't be able to move that turn. These two have formed the core of many strategies designed around Dondozo and Tatsugiri. From the inception of Toxic Orb and Dura Tatsugiri, giving Dondozo the stats, waiting a turn for the Sushi to die, and then bringing in the Flamingo to copy the stats after, to specializing how Dondozo battles with Terra types to remove the weaknesses it has, even going so far as to go for Chesto Resto and Lumberry Dondozo to restore its HP to full if it ever loses HP, or if it ever feels threatened about being knocked out. There have been so many strategies around Dondozo and Tatsugiri. To counter them, a multitude of strategies have come out to literally shut them down. First with Intimidate, Spam, and Burns, then to Spores and Clear Smogs from Amoonguss, Haze from various Water-type Pokemon like Palafin, copying the stats and then swapping in Unaware users, Toxic Poison from Glimmora's ability, Unaware Skeletor with Terra Grass, Perish Trap, and even recently seen from Mimikyu using Curse. Every team has to have some way to counter these two, or else they run the risk of just flat out losing to Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Just to bring out a point about every team needing a Dondozo counter, during the early VGC tournaments, Dondozos even ran the move Fissure, specifically to counter other Dondozo teams, resulting in those Dondozos running Terra Flying to counter Fissure. Everyone needs a Dondozo counter, and despite all of these counters, despite everyone having these counters, and even with the addition of Paradox Pokemon, and with just a few days left before Series 3 releases, allowing the inclusion of the Legends of Ruin into VGC, how is it that these two keep coming back time and time again? Especially at the highest levels of VGC, where they run open team sheets, not allowing even the element of a surprise Terra to give Dondozo an edge over its competition. Well, the answer is simple, because they're just that strong. And again, if the opponent doesn't have a response to them, they can win the game on their own if the opponent doesn't have any way to defeat them. Counter them or neutralize them, these two will win games with how strong they are together. If Dondozo trades out with one Pokemon, reduces a second's HP to low levels, and even forces out a berry use for a third, then Dondozo has already all but won the game by itself, because again, Tatsugiri is protected. And your other Pokemon, if you lead with those two, are still in the back and are untouched. Remember, they have to deal with Dondozo first, before they can get at Tatsugiri or your other Pokemon, if you choose to use these two Pokemon for yourself. They have to fear a lot of counters, but if you can either bait out, remove, or get around them, then Dondozo and Tatsugiri would defeat their threats. They have changed from a massive blunt hammer that you can toss out at any time from their original inception into VGC to a double-edged sword where if you time your swing right, they'll win you the match. But if you don't, it will backfire heavily, as these two only have one gimmick, one strategy, one objective. And if the opponent manages to get rid of your stats or shut you down in some way, you lose a huge advantage that your team is basically relying on. Until next time, kiddies, I'll see what I can talk about in my next video. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
When you've reached the point where you can't go on, just come to me, you'll be safe from harm. If you trust in me, then I'll trust in you. There's nothing more that I need to do. If you put your hands in front of mine, we'll be shining